Before I state anything else, guys, let me just say that last video that I did about Trapper Ross, I don't want people to take that the wrong way, because sometimes when somebody criticizes somebody else or critiques somebody else's work, it can be seen as hate or shade that he's trying to throw on that person. That was not my intent at all, man. And some of these guys, they make very quality stuff, very well edited. It's TV quality content, a lot of it. So much respect to him and everybody that's doing their thing on YouTube, man. That video really was more meant as like a note of caution. And to be honest with you, I didn't think that it really, anybody was going to see it. Certainly not him, but he did see it and comment on it. So I'm just responding, to that because I want to clear up the impression that was given off by that. And like I had stated at the beginning of that video, the stuff that I was critiquing from his video was stuff that I was way more guilty of myself. If you know about my old channels, I just picked this channel up last month. And if you were on my first two channels, I was like 10 times worse than any of these other guys now. The point that I was trying to make with the glorification, because, he had made the point that I was guilty of the same thing in my video by naming, the TV, or repeating what the police had said about the TVLs out west, and naming, the most violent gang wars, and glorifying it. And so that was making me guilty of what I critiqued him for doing. There's a fine line when it comes to glorification, man, and this is something that's sometimes there's a subtle difference here. Saying that somebody's the deadliest gang, or saying that some neighborhood is the most dangerous neighborhood, or that some gang war is the bloodiest gang war, that statement in and of itself is not, that's not a glorification statement. Let me give you an example. The police come up and, they're giving a press conference and they say this gang is, commits the most homicides of any gang in Chicago. Okay, then you have those same guys from that gang, or somebody that's clicked up with them or whatever on social media. They get on there and they say we catch the most bodies of anybody in Chicago. Those two parties, the police and that gang, they just stated the exact same thing. One of them was glorifying it, the other one was condemning it. Okay, and the difference is in the context. The police are talking about this in the context of trying to stop it. You see what I'm saying? The gang is talking about it in a context of boasting, and in the context of promoting that activity as far as like increasing the score over their enemies. If it's a statistical fact and it's accurate, that in and of itself isn't glorification, because if that's glorification, then newspapers, FBI analysts, everybody that collects data and reports statistics on crime in the city of Chicago would all be guilty of that. Okay? But that's the key point, though. It has to be accurate. If it's not accurate and it's an opinion that's just formed off of one's impression from rap music or from social media posts and things of that nature, now we're moving away from an academic, analytical perspective into more like fan territory, and that's where it gets kind of iffy. The thing that's missing in some of these guys, on YouTube, is the perspective of the guys involved, and the perspective of their families. When the mainstream media covers a murder here in Chicago, what do they always do? They interview the family of the victim, right? They almost always do this. Anytime they can do it, they do that. And that piece is essential, because if that piece is missing, it's very easy to look at this from the perspective of, I don't just want to call them drill fans, like just anybody looking at it from a perspective that's removed emotionally from the situation. They can easily look at it in a way that allows them to glorify it without having to confront the emotional impact that this is having on real people. Okay, after I got in tune, with the families, a lot of the guys that I was talking about in my videos, it became impossible for me to make a video without having in the back of my mind the fact that their family member is watching this video. So the rule that I live by now is anything that I wouldn't say with their family in the room as I'm making the video, I don't say on the video. I've had guys' moms cry to me on the phone for an hour straight, talking to me about the comments that they read online about them, about their son and all this kind of stuff. Unless it's something that the police state or something that the mainstream media has already stated word for word, okay, that can be backed up by like statistics, I'm going to get the family's input, or I'm going to get their friends' input, or even their input, if I can do that. And I have done that. You guys know that I've done that a lot, gotten face-to-face interviews with actual gang members. If somebody is going to put on someone's brother, someone's son, someone's cousin, the reputation of being part of the deadliest set in Chicago, if that information is accurate, then the mom, the brother, the cousin, whoever it might be, can't really complain, because at the end of the day, the police are going to speak on that and say the exact same thing. And if their loved one really has earned that reputation, they can't blame the people that report on it. If, however, someone is being given that label who didn't earn that name statistically by actually being a member of the deadliest gang, if there are actually other gangs that are deadlier and somebody is just being given arbitrarily the name of deadliest gang, and this is somebody's brother, somebody's cousin, that's stepping out of bounds, okay? Because now you're putting a particular reputation on somebody that didn't earn it. If they did earn it, that's one thing, okay? Because, again, it's not being glorified, it's just being stated as a statistical truth. If they didn't earn it, though, we're in territory where now it's like slanderous. Due diligence and homework has to be put into this to be able to back up what one says, especially based on what the police are going to say. Because if the police have already said something, these guys and their families can't complain about it. You know, they can't really come at you if law enforcement is on the same page as you. With the NLMB stuff, every gang in Chicago doesn't have the same culture. There's gangs that clout chase big time, more so the younger gangs. There's gangs that don't have any big homies. They brag about the fact that they don't have any big homies. They don't take orders from anybody, and they're just out there like doing everything on social media, putting out everything that they're doing, self-snitching like crazy. Then there's other gangs that are more old school, okay? They've got guys in their 40s and 50s that are they're not necessarily giving them orders, because the shorties don't listen to that anyways, but they instill in them a sense of like, we're gonna move quiet. They don't want the clout, okay? Some of these gangs. No Limit and Loke City are two gangs that are more like that. And a lot of the gangs out west are like that. It's one of the reasons why you don't hear about the guys from out west as much. Even though those gang wars out there are much bloodier, they stay a lot more quiet about it. And there's definitely, I think, a lot more older guys in it out there, because the money is so deep out there. But guys that aren't chasing clout, like that aspect of their activity, not the activity itself. The activity itself should not be respected at all, but that aspect of it, I feel like I'm going to honor that. As somebody who knows a lot of those guys personally, if somebody is just doing something to get money, even if it's illegal, I don't condone it and I don't want to promote it. But if he's trying to move in silence, I'm going to step back and let him move in silence. Okay? I told you guys I could expose a lot of guys' hustles on this channel. These videos would probably do a lot of views. They'd probably run up a lot of numbers. But if somebody's, said, I'm going to live by the code, he doesn't have any social media accounts, he doesn't put it on there, he's moving quietly, I'm going to respect that and step back and let him do his thing. So gangs that, aren't chasing that, they shouldn't be given that. Now, like I said, there's some guys that do that, but as far as I'm concerned, if they're doing that, let them do that themselves. And, let them just put it out there, and they're going to get enough hype off of just what they're doing. But to put an additional spotlight on anybody that is doing that, to me is promotional. The second thing is the music. You guys know that when I got started about 7-8 years ago, I was interviewing a lot of drill artists and promoting their music. I was posting their videos on my page. What eventually made me stop doing that was, I was talking to some of the older guys in the neighborhood, and they had been on what I was on at first too, like thinking, oh, this is going to help guys get out of the hood. This is going to help guys get money in a legal way, so it's a positive thing. Let's promote this drill music. Let's help these guys get on. After a while, though, myself, again, and some of the older guys, our hopes for what that music was going to do for the city began to collide with the reality of what it was actually doing. And the effect that it was having was purely destructive. If I made a video where I just named all the people in Chicago that died because of songs, that video would be an hour long. I mean, drill music at the end of the day is like a commercial for gangbanging. And the chief function of it, the way it started was really for these gangs to basically diss other gangs. It was like a replacement for the purpose that tagging used to serve back in the 90s. Guys would go to other guys' neighborhoods, tag up their neighborhood with all type of disrespectful stuff. Now they just make a song, instead of doing that. So it definitely, it's part of gang banging. It's part of the whole gang lifestyle in Chicago, making these drill songs. Almost every neighborhood in the city has rappers, and make songs directly disrespecting the dead members of other gangs. And it calls in the culture, in gang culture, that almost demands that gang to respond with murder to the making of that song. Like, these songs, real life, get people killed. So I had to stop doing it. I couldn't do it anymore. I can't listen to the stuff anymore. I don't promote the stuff anymore. The other older guys, from the neighborhoods, and it hits even closer home to them because these are mostly black guys, that it's a stain on a lot of the activities that they're trying to promote to uplift the community, and it's like it counteracts that, because it really gets to these kids' heads, and it's promoting a way of thinking among the youth that is just perpetuating the bullcrap like more than needs to happen. So the music is, I would say, way bigger than the blogs. Glorifies the violence, man, and causes the violence to continue. And you can see a concrete effect with certain songs that have gotten guys directly killed. Everything that I, pointed out that he or anybody else is doing in these blogs, I did 10 times worse when I got started. I learned from my mistakes. I had numerous people trying to kill me. I ran into some of these people in person in the city. I'm Chicago born and raised. I lived here during the whole time that I was making those videos. Still live here now, facing a year in prison. 99% I'm going to have to do that year in prison, probably starting this fall. So I'm going to see, and I already have seen a lot of the guys in there, when I was in Cook County Jail, that, we make these videos about. In Chicago, too, there's another aspect of this, and that is the racial tension in this city has always run deep, even from the earliest days. Now, the race relations today in Chicago, I would say, are better than they've ever been from the time that I started, from the time that I was born. When I was growing up, there were neighborhoods where black people, and where anybody couldn't even go based on your race. There were certain lines that you just couldn't cross. There might be a few spots where things might get kind of dicey if you're a certain race, and I know some of my friends have gotten chased based off that. But when a white person, or a Latino person or a black person makes videos about any other race, okay, for an outsider coming from an area that's integrated and where there's people of all different races interacting all the time, that might not seem like such a controversial move. And I know Europe is much more integrated. Chicago is the most segregated city in America. So anytime that somebody from one race is going to speak on something that's going on in a different community, if the members of that community are not integral to the process, if they're not part of the process of making that video, if they're not the sources or helping to make it or something like that, it rubs a lot of people the wrong way. And I don't want to get too deep into this because this is a whole nother topic, but whites in Chicago really, at the beginning, and this is one of the reasons why I started doing these Chicago history videos, were responsible for putting in motion what eventually had a snowball effect to become what you see in the streets today. Okay, and I covered this in some of those Chicago history vids, which I think I'm going to put up on Spotify. But from the earliest days, politics and crime were intricately intertwined, and you really couldn't rise to any rank in politics in the city if you didn't have connections to the criminal underworld. Chicago became an extremely corrupt city, and gangs ran the city from the earliest days. Capone had his guys, and it goes all the way back. Michael Cassius McDonald. You literally had criminals running the city of Chicago, and these were white guys. Okay, so the whites, the European immigrants that came here, they instilled into the city of Chicago this culture of crime and corruption. Larry Hoover and Jeff Ford and all these guys that started the black gangs, they came along later. These guys weren't even from Chicago. These guys were from the South. They came up here from Mississippi and saw this, and saw if we're going to get on, we got to get on the same bullcrap that these white boys are on. So I don't want to say that they were forced to do it, but they were basically put in a position where you were going to starve and be on the outskirts of society in Chicago if you didn't cooperate with the gang bullcrap. So they started to get on the same thing. There was a tremendous amount of pressure on them to do that, just because of the environment that the European immigrants had set up here. If that whole historical background is missing, it's very easy to just put this 100% on black people, and just say, oh, they're just, they just love gangbanging and criminality because that's just part of their culture. Forgetting that it was actually us that started this whole culture. Now we started to fall off with it, like I've said, around like the 80s and 90s. But up until that point, we were doing it heavily, okay? That whole aspect of the criminal culture of the city needs to be included. Because without that, like I said, it's very easy to just dehumanize and look down on a lot of the black guys that are involved in this stuff, man. Forgetting where they got this whole thing. So, ironically, I don't know if I would call the black gang leaders culture vultures, because at the end of the day, they were kind of not forced into it, but pressed into it. But they are, they did copy what they were seeing. And it was in order to, on some level, make it here, because you had to get on that to make it here. You had to sell your soul. I mean, for a jelly roll, because you see what happened to these guys now, sitting in prison for life. It's a trap, but very easy to take that bait when you see everybody else on that. So, yeah, that's just what I would say about that. No shade to Trap Lord Ross, no hate, but this, from somebody in Chicago, this runs much deeper than a lot of people just listening to the music on the outside are going to realize. And the line between glorification and just documentary type analysis is very easy to cross if you don't include the perspective of the families, perspective of the members themselves, and if you do it in a way so as to promote the music, which should not be promoted. Drill music is 100% negative, and I encourage everybody to boycott the stuff, because the stuff is it's purely harmful to the city. So yeah, that's my 2 cents on that. Your boy Winnie C Report. I'm out.